Hello everybody and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. I'm Ian Kroll and I am joined by Chris Beasley and Conor O'Neill, and we are here to talk all things Everton. Specifically on the agenda today, transfers and Everton transfers and how active Everton have been in the transfer market so soon, early in the window. First off, let's say hello to the lads. Chris, how are things? First day I've seen you since you've been back off holiday. Did you go anywhere nice?
Think it was on holiday, was it?
Well, you were off work. You were off work, weren't you?
I had a day off, something like that. Yeah, you must have passed me by that one. Yeah, busy, aren't I? Because like I said, there's plenty going on and plenty of irons in the fire and various deals coming and going, as it were.
I'm going to get the all-important question out the way first. What did you have in your butties today?
Today? It was a we're now on post butties as opposed to free butties. It was a nice bit like Cumberland sausage. It was like sliced, obviously, and cheese, cheddar cheese on the other one. So I tend to have the meat on one and the cheese on the other.
Do you know Mrs. Beasley makes Chris's butties every single day and he doesn't know what he's getting until he opens them?
I do know that, yeah. He's told me this before.
Well, we got the important question.
and they say romance is dead.
I know. I'd be worried that like you get something that you don't really like.
But I think Mrs. Beasley knows what Chris likes.
You think?
Different podcast, that one.
I'm sure she did. Are we still talking about sandwiches?
Well, I was. This is what you're still talking about.
Okay, we'll move on. Conor, how are things? You okay?
Oh, well, yeah. I think we should move swiftly on. Yeah.
I was going to talk about another session on the karaoke that I heard that you were doing.
Probably did occur, yeah.
Yeah.
Did occur, yeah. Most unfortunately for people who were in the crock a few Saturdays ago, they would have heard me killing an all-time 90s classic. But you know the things you do when you've had one too many shandies.
Well, are we expecting any more sessions on the karaoke? I mean, you are now an expert karaoke singer.
Well, far. I mean, expert in getting up there, making a prat of yourself. I think is the best way to describe. But
you shouldn't put yourself down like that, Conor.
I think we can't rule out another session anytime soon. I think is the best way to describe that. Okay. Well, we definitely will move on now. Let's do a little bit of promo first off. Just give us a like, give us a share, and give us a subscribe. We are live on YouTube, and once this live is finished, our audio side of the podcast will be uploaded to Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So give us a 5-star or a 4-star review on those platforms. We'd be very grateful for all the support, and also leave us a comment on today's stream. Anything you want to get off your chest, if you want to just let us know what you're doing, any questions to the lads, any opinions, thoughts, get them on the stream, and I will ask Chris and Conor what do you think, even if it's not Everton related, just let us know. It's a Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's a Thursday afternoon. Thursday, yeah.
Looking forward to Friday, looking forward to the weekend. Nice chill show today, with plenty of transfer news to discuss. Okay, Chris, let's go into it then.
Yeah.
This is my first show this week because I have been off.
Yeah.
I know you and Joe did one on Monday, and there was obviously a lot of activity over the weekend and early parts of the week. Obviously, still the activity is still there, but I think probably a few things are getting finalised with outgoings and ingoings. But first off, question I suppose is: are you quite surprised with the level of activity Everton have shown early stages of this transfer window?
Well, I think it's obviously it's down to the PSR issue, isn't it? And obviously getting bodies in and out ahead of that, like window within a window, and it is encouraging on the one hand, because I think that the years when Everton have been able to do business early, maybe for different reasons in the past, things have tend to go well. I remember one particular back 2006 when Moyes brought in Joleon Lescott, there was Andrew Johnson, and Tim Howard came in on loan, and they seemed to start well that season because they got the bodies in early, got the deals done. I know it's very different circumstances now, but getting the first new face in from Aston Villa. We've been just trying to pronounce this off air now. Tim Iroegbunam, shall we say?
I'm going for Iroegbunam.
Yeah, okay. When he's whatever, he has actually shown us how to say it himself. So if the viewers want to watch that one and get to grips with him, how you say it. No, he's a promising young player, and we don't know a great deal about him. I was discussing this with Joe because, you know, he hasn't played a lot of Premier League football, but he does meet the sort of profile that I'd like to see now with Everton going for young, hungry players. Obviously, that was offset with Lewis Dobbin going in the other direction, but there's more deals on the horizon, it seems, and it'd be interesting to see what happens between now and obviously the end of the weekend with the end of June and the end of the financial year for the football clubs.
I mean, Connor, from what was communicated by the club, specifically, obviously, Kevin Thelwell, are you surprised that because I almost thought that we'd be having to wait for other clubs to buy our players before we started to do any business. Now, you know, that strictly hasn't been the case, really, has it? So are you surprised at that in itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always surprised because of what we've become accustomed to in recent years, which, you know, if we're being honest, we've had to see players depart before we bring players in. And even you think back to, you know, the deadline day last summer when obviously Iwobi and Tom Cannon left the club, didn't they, in deals I think that were described as, you know, essentially too good for the club to turn down given the contract situations that the two found themselves in. So you are surprised of how active Everton have been in the transfer market early doors because we're not used to this. But I think now we're kind of maybe seeing the benefits of some sort of settled structure behind the scenes. Obviously, Kevin Thelwell's been in for a couple of years now, and Sean Dyche, and obviously we could also be, you know, reaping the benefits of Everton, you know, being assured of their Premier League safety in April. So obviously, you know, in recent years, it's been right until May, hasn't it, where, you know, we've been unsure what division Everton will be playing in next season. And you think back to the season before, and obviously to be born from the final day, you know, going into that final 2 weeks of the season, it very much was up in the air what division Everton were going to be playing football in. So the fact this time round, obviously, you know, that I think we all knew, didn't we, from probably the middle of April, that we were pretty much on course to stay up. Obviously, got 3 wins in the space of 8 days, secured our status, and, you know, maybe we are seeing the benefits of that. But yeah, I think it is surprising to see Everton be so active in terms of incomings. But I think we're just seeing the signs of what modern day transfer windows probably are, and you know, it is probably more of an American series, but player trading. You know, one player goes out, one player comes in. It's probably more accustomed that way of operating to American sport, where one comes in, one goes out. We're probably not going to see that over here because of the way squad structures work, PSR works, etc. You know, it will be one in, one out, but it's good to see Everton strengthening. It's good to see Everton strengthening areas of the pitch that and well needed as well, because, you know, we've all been crying out, haven't we, for additional firepower. Yeah. Midfield is obviously an area of concern, given, you know, Andre Gomez has left the club, and it's probably an area where we've been a little bit light needs. Obviously, the return of Jack Harrison, who done well last season. So, yeah, it's a real positive, and it is surprising, but it's a nice surprise.
It is a nice surprise, Chris. I mean, you don't want to give too much credit too early. Obviously, we're in the window. We don't know what's going to happen, but there's clearly been some careful and considerate planning from Kevin Thelwell and Sean Dyche with regards to all this. And as Conor mentioned there, which, you know, been heavily scrutinised over the past week or so, this player swaps, player trading, which obviously seems to be benefiting both parties. Obviously, we've seen Lewis Dobbin depart and Iroegbunam come in. So, yeah, I mean, credit to Kevin Thelwell, I suppose, at this stage to be making these deals happen that benefit the club.
Yeah, see, like you say, it's a long way to go, and it might be a case of them coming in and then others coming out. But yeah, being proactive, and there seems to be, you know, a strategy to it, with a similar sort of profile of like I said, of the players between Everton and Villa who've gone the opposite directions. But if that needs to be done, it's a way around it, and it's a way of negotiating the situation. Then yeah, I mean, there's a lot been made of it all. I mean, Joe did a really good piece, I thought, talking about how hypocritical all the shouts were, you know, when people complaining about, you know, that Everton were getting round this system or the deals that they were doing, almost like, oh well, you've got to sell your prize assets for at a reduced price. We don't like all this, or Everton might be smart, whatever. I mean, people use the phrase cheating. It's ridiculous. So yeah, you got to you know, credit where it's due. Like I said, it's a long way to go, but you know, if you've got to be proactive, and that's what they're doing, one way or the other.
I mean, just on that, Conor, then. The level of scrutiny, I think I put a tweet out which got quite a lot of reaction with regards to the scrutiny I feel like Everton have faced. Quite a lot of Manchester City fans jumped on it, and I've got no issue with what Manchester City do with regards to spending their money. I feel like they should be able to spend what they wish, but obviously they are, restricted by PSR. But do you feel Everton are scrutinised more than any other club with regards to this because of what's happened in the past with points deductions and breaking PSR rules?
Easy target, aren't we?
I'm only really bringing that up because
it's true,
we're in the blue bubble, aren't we? So
it is like, you I know obviously Forest were ultimately found guilty of PSR and fined, but their fine was their points deduction was nowhere near the level that Everton's was, and I don't know. There's always been that lingering doubt, hasn't it, that Everton were an easy target because they did break the rules and it was extreme what the sanctions were that were thrown to, but they're like that big enough name to make an impact, but they're not in the top 6 elite bracket to really kind of upset the apple cart. So I think we do live in a blue bubble, and obviously we look at it very differently, but at the end of the day, all Everton have done is find ways around what they need to do. Now, if other clubs do that, it's probably held as a masterstroke,
Yeah.
And this whole thing of like Lewis Dobbin, being sold. Well, other clubs have sold prospects who haven't kicked the ball for far higher prices than what Everton have sold Lewis Dobbin for.
Yeah.
Not so long ago, a certain Ryan Brewster was sold by Liverpool to Sheffield United for up to 25 million. And he barely kicked the ball for Liverpool in the Premier League. Hasn't really done much since then. No one was saying then that, that you can't do that. If anything, Michael Edwards was held as a genius because it was like, he's done well. Was it Brad Smith, 15 million to Bournemouth? These deals have been going on for a long time, but no one's ever questioned them. The person who's overseen them has been held as a genius. Now all of a sudden Everton have got involved and are acting smart and sensible and doing what other clubs are doing. It's an issue. I just find it mind-boggling, and I think Joe Thomas, our esteemed colleague, wrote a really good piece on this earlier in the week, about Everton kind of being billed as the bad guys and, breaking Premier League rules and stuff like that. It's a load of absolute nonsense. There's no rules being broken. Everton have just done what they're entitled to do. They've done player trading, and so be it. I just think it's a complete overreaction. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about Manchester United, hasn't he, and Ratcliffe, and how he's kind of maybe thrown his toys out the pram because Man United don't want to pay whatever one for Jared Branthwaite. But tough love, like that's the way it is. Everton have got a price in mind. They're entitled to stick to that price. You go and buy a house. You don't go around and offer someone a third of what they want to, and then kick up a fuss because they declined your offer.
Not going to be held to ransom.
I just find the whole thing absolutely mind-boggling. But it doesn't surprise you, does it? Because, like I say, I think Everton have become a bit of an easy target for stuff like this, and we've seen it in the past where they're a big enough club to kind of beat the stick with, but they're not in the quite top 6, 7 cartel. So, yeah, it's not surprising, but. I think it's a load of rubbish. I think Everton have done nothing wrong. They've used what they can do to their advantage and reap the benefits.
What you've just said there is perfect to be clipped for our new Royal Blue TikTok account, which obviously you're going to give a follow after this podcast now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you're listening and watching live on YouTube, you can also give that a follow with the QR code that is also on the screen.
Glad to be of service.
What a bit of promo that is.
Yeah.
I'll clip that for you later, Connor. We're getting a lot of questions in with regards to this, so keep them coming in, and then we're going to talk specifically about players. And we haven't got specific updates, but we can obviously give our opinions and give an idea of roughly where certain deals are. But we've got the Blues YouTube channel who regularly contributed to the comments section. Where's that gone? So Everton are factually punished more than any other club regarding PSR. Not sure how anyone could argue against that. I mean, that's kind of what you were kind of alluding to, and we know Nottingham Forest have been punished. I mean, Chris, you could clearly see from January even to now, other clubs are a little bit terrified of spending money as well. Unfortunately, Everton was the team that fell foul of the PSR rules, and in my opinion, were made a bit of an example of.
Yeah, and like as Conor was saying, it's just doing just trading players. It's not. I mean, the fees are undisclosed, but from what our understanding is, it's not gone for anything wildly different than any sort of market value. I'd expect. It's not like Everton are cooking the books and say, well, actually, we sold Lewis Dobbin for 40 million, and we're okay now. It's all done. Pure profit that with PSR. Yeah. They said it is undisclosed, but they're both in or around the region of 10 million, give or take. So it's not like they're being silly with it. It's just said.
But we couldn't. Sorry to interrupt. We couldn't do that anyway, though, because Villa are on the other end of that.
Yeah,
and they would
be paying,
have to submit their accounts to say how much they've paid for.
Yeah.
So obviously it is undisclosed, but it is effectively a player swap.
Yeah.
You know, however way it's been done, it's all within the books, isn't it?
Yeah, because like you say, it's a good point you make there. Because if they put them at hugely inflated values, then it would have been detriment to each other of doing it that way. So, it's as much as Everton are a much bigger team than a lot of people who aren't Evertonians would give them credit for. They don't have the influence within the sort of the national media narrative in terms of, like I said, there's a lot of these, with Manchester United and the pursuit of Bramthwaite, it's obviously a lot of briefing going on there from Old Trafford, and the way that the stories have come out, it's obvious that they're playing a game there, and there's a lot of people who are willing to help them along there, and Everton don't benefit from that. But Everton got to stick to the guns and keep doing what they're doing, because you just got to hope that after what have been a couple of wretched years or so, that there is hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel, as we're hopefully looking forward to what is Goodison Park's historic final season. That might be some slightly better times ahead.
I mean, just on that.
Lewis Dobbin is probably a £10 million player. Yeah. In today's current market, in today's current transfer world, Lewis Dobbin is probably worth £10 million. Yeah.
I've seen someone touting that as £2 million.
There's players going to League One clubs for £2 million. Yeah. Lewis Dobbin is done okay in the Premier League last season, so he probably is a £10 million. If you were being, probably really tough, you probably say 7.5 to 8 if you were to be really, but probably got the chance to rise to 10 million. In today's world, he probably has been valued at what he is being valued at. You've got players going for 70, 80, 90, 100 million. He's not that level, but he probably is worth about £10 million in today's market. Well, so it's like Chris says, it's not like they've gone, we've gone and got 35 million for this lad who's never kicked the ball for us, been sat on the bench all season. It's probably about right. The deal is the financial package, what Everton are probably going to get for Lewis Dobbin, is probably about right.
Putting a player in the Premier League must also add a premium onto that as well. And let's face it, he scored a Premier League goal.
Yeah. Against a very good Chelsea. I know they were out of form at the time, but, a very good Chelsea side.
Emma has said, spoiled today, Chris. So I assume she means in reference to what you had on your sandwiches.
Right.
What was it again? Sausage?
It was the sausage and the cheese.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that does sound nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the PSR deadline and, moving on to specifically, Ben Godfrey, because we've had the question here, Chris, basically.
Yeah.
Where has it gone? So Steve Fredericks has said, would a Godfrey sale resolve PSR? I mean, the PSR deadline is fast approaching the end of this month. I feel like when people talk about this deadline, I feel like the world's just going to explode if Everton don't sell anyone by this time. I feel like that is the case. But have we got anything on? Obviously, Godfrey, it's Lyon and Atalanta who've tabled bids and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't give you a definitive answer on that, because I don't think it's been disclosed. But there seems to be an understanding that it could take them possibly within that roundabout area. I know there's a few things need to be tied up. I mean, the difference also is with Godfrey that it's Lyon, which is obviously incidentally John Textor's club, of course, and Atalanta. And now I understand that Lyon, a bit like Minter actually, have offered a little bit more potentially than Atalanta, but the player's personal preference, I understand, certainly from what I've heard from Joe, is to go to Atalanta. After they did well, didn't they, against Liverpool in Europe last season, and he obviously fancies the move to northern Italy, to Lombardy there in Bergamo, possibly that, and go and play in League One in France for Lyon. So maybe if it's Atalanta, there might still be some more negotiations in terms of the fee, whereas Lyon were offering a bit more, so that could come into play as well. But I mean, it could certainly help Everton getting towards going over the line. So it might not be that they'd have to rely on what we thought one of the real sort of big money assets, Amadou Onana has been mentioned. I did a piece myself how Bayern Munich might be turning their attentions to him because of the frustrations they've got with Polina at Fulham and agreeing a fee with them. Or, Jared Branthwaite, of course, we've discussed already with Manchester United. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Newcastle United were in for him, and then that one fell apart because they weren't prepared to pay Everton's asking price. So it might not be that. I mean, those players, of course, could all move on later in the summer, but at least if Everton were sorted on the PSR score, they wouldn't be held, we use that phrase, I was going to say held to ransom again, but in the other way, they wouldn't have to sell those players for less than what they felt was the market value. So I think we were having a bit of a sort of light-hearted discussion about this, Connor, weren't we, beforehand? But if Kevin Felwell was to solve the PSR issues through selling Lewis Dobbin and Ben Godfrey, then he really would deserve some praise.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to come in with something? Or?
I was going to say... I think he deserves a little bit more than praise. If Everton can offset the PSR issues, wherever they may be, obviously there's a lot of conflict and talk around what the actual numbers are and stuff, and you suspect only people at the top of Everton Football Club know exactly what the numbers are. But if Everton can break this by selling Ben Godfrey and Lewis Dobbin, who've both, been good servants to the football club, I don't think it'll be forgotten. Godfrey thought come in and done really well last season when he was called upon. Yeah. Don't think you can ever question, his attitude and stuff. Hasn't really worked out for him. Obviously got COVID, didn't he, at the start of Rafa's. I
feel like that's set him back a lot.
He's over Connor's shoulder there. I can see him now on that programme.
Careful what you say.
One last time. But no, obviously caught COVID, didn't he? And he never really, and then obviously got himself back fifth at the start of the following season under Frank Lampard, and a really bad injury, didn't he, on the opening day against Chelsea, and that set him back again. And it's probably been a torrid couple of years for him, I think, after that first initial season under Carlo, where when he come in, I thought he was really, really good. And, ironic, isn't it, the European Championships on at the minute, Ben Godfrey was actually in England's Premier League squad for the last European Championships. Didn't make the final cut, but being so impressive that season, that was in the 33 player squad for that tournament under Gareth Southgate. So, it just shows how good his performances were. He's not being able to kick on. If we're being honest, there's better players in the positions in which he probably wants to play more favourably, which is centre back. So I think if Kevin Felwell can get Ben Godfrey off the books before Sunday, and that solves Everton's PSR issues, then that's really is a tremendous piece of double work, because it ensures that Everton remain in a strong position with the likes of Jared Branthwaite and Amadou Onana and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and they get what they want. And let's face it, one of them probably would leave out of Calvert-Lewin, Onana, and Branthwaite. One probably could still leave before the start of the season, but it just means that Everton can get what they want for the player, and they're not
not being forced to sell.
You think back to what you did with Richarlison, where basically Daniel leaving Tottenham put Everton into a corner, and the club reckon they sold him for 20 million less than what they valued him at. You don't want that history repeating itself. So if Everton can get this Godfrey deal over the line, which probably suits all parties, he gets a fresh chance somewhere else. Everton get the money in the bank to offset PSR issues, works for everyone, and make sure that the club are in a real strong hold moving forward with Branthwaite, because you don't want to be selling our assets on the cheap. And you'd like to think as well that hopefully, if they do, one of them players does go for biggish money, that can be reinvested into the playing squad.
Taking PSR away from it then, and with the figures that have been banded around for Godfrey, which I understand is like around 15 million, is that think his worth at this moment in time?
Probably, yeah. And obviously he's out of contract next summer, isn't he? So that comes into consideration massively, because obviously you run the risk of essentially it's quite ironic, because obviously he's linked with two teams who are based in Europe, and from January onwards he can negotiate contracts, can't you, if teams in Europe? So you run the fact of we could get to January and agree a deal to go to Atalanta in a year's by this time next year. So I think 15 million probably is about right for Ben Godfrey, given the lack of football he's played over the last couple of years. Like I say, the injury problems, and the fact Everton have got other players in that position as well, because obviously Michael Keane, James Tarkowski, obviously Jared Branthwaite. So I think that probably is about right for Ben Godfrey.
I mean, Chris Connor touched upon Godfrey with his opinion and his career at Everton. What have you made of him? He's obviously had a lot of ups and downs. I think my biggest thing about Ben Godfrey is that I actually don't know where his best position is. He's played all over the park, or so I should say, played all over the defence, left back, centre back, right back. So moving on, if he was going to go to another club, where is his best position as well? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the crux of the whole matter, isn't it? He sees himself very much still as a centre-half. He thinks centre-back's his best position. That's where he wants to play. And chances have been very few and far between with that at Everton. I think some of his best performances, even though he's right-sided, have actually come as a left-back. For some reason, he seems to maraud up that wing with a bit more sort of freedom. I don't know why, because he's a right-footed player. But, that's been the problem. He hardly played at all the first half of last season. To be fair, he did very well when he came in. It was that game at Burnley, the last game of the 4-match winning run in December, slotted into what was a back 3 at the time, or back 5, and did very well. I remember him making a very important clearance at one point, which was obviously at the ground where he'd suffered so badly last time. Everton were there, ironically, when Dyche was still the Burnley manager, and I think it was his mistake at the end when Burnley won that one 3-2, so he went back to Turf Moor, did well, and then had a bit of a run of games second half the season, mostly at full back, mostly at right back. Sort of was up and down at times. Obviously, square peg in a round hole, and doing a job for the team. It was interesting because Dyche had other sort of natural right backs available to him at that time, but he stuck with Godfrey for a while there, and so that's been the problem. He sees himself, playing at the heart of the defence. That's just not gonna happen for him forever. I mean, it'd be ironic, wouldn't it, if Jared Bramthwaite was to be sold and then there's a slot going, but even then he's vying for a spot with Michael Keane, who's kind of been ahead of him in the pecking order. So it's a shame, really, because when he came in, he looked a really exciting prospect, and Everton either way are going to take a loss on him. I think they paid an initial 20 million. That first season was the COVID season, wasn't it, before he had COVID himself? That was the behind closed doors season that Connor mentioned, when he actually did so well and was in the long list for the Euro. So it hasn't quite worked out for him, and he's had a few bad times with injury, so it probably would benefit both parties. But that is the crux of the matter, isn't it? And he might prefer to play centre back, but he just hasn't had the opportunity to play in that position at Everton. So it's time to move on, probably.
I think the biggest thing one of the biggest plaudits you can give Godfrey is he tended to bounce back quite well after really bad games, because I was at Doncaster for the League Cup tie last August with Joe, and that was obviously a very nervy night for the Blues, which they got over the line in the end. But my God, at half time the two of us were staring at each other thinking, like, this is like disaster at the highest level. And Godfrey was very much at the forefront of what was a horror show in that first half. He had a very much a night to forget.
Yeah.
But like Chris said there, I don't think we've seen him much actually after that. Yeah. But then when he come back in against Burnley, done really well. And it was the same last year, wasn't it? There'd be times where he'd come in, drop out, come back in, drop out. And he always, he put a shift in. And when he did have bad nights, he always had the mental strength to bounce back. And we were there at Old Trafford, weren't we, when Dyche's first season, when he got brought off at half time, and he'd been given I think Rashford ran him ragged, to be fair, and I think he come back a few weeks later and bounced back and put some real good performances in. So one of the big plugs you always give him is that he always bounced back really well after a tough night or a tough day at the office. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. There was times where criticism was probably levelled at him, whether it was fairly or unfairly, but he always seemed to, when you thought he should be out of the team and he was picked, he would always have that good game. Fair enough. We've had a question here, Chris. I'll point this at you. We're not going to talk about the takeover, but Liam Dunn has said, "Why is the Echo casting doubt on the takeover today?" Any?
What all it was that Dave Powell did a piece about the Freaking Group visiting the club this week.
I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, and he got an update on that. We'll try and relay what I've heard from Dave and that. Not so much as casting doubt. Both parties very much want it to happen, but I think there was just an air of caution that it's still a long way from being completed, because Dave's original understanding had been there was certainly a visit from the Freaking Group this week. They went to Goodison Park, they went to the club's offices at the Royal Liver Buildings, and they went to the new stadium site at Bramley Moor Dock. Now, Dave's original understanding that it was Dan Freakin himself was in the group and his son. They subsequently found out that wasn't the case. Freakin Senior or Junior themselves, they weren't part of that delegation. It must have been other members of the group. So that was what that was about. And we had the amendment with the story, but just didn't want people to sort of get carried away and thinking that it was a done deal at this stage. I mean, obviously, this is the fourth time, I think, in a couple of years that Farhad Moshiri has entered into a period of exclusivity with a potential buyer. All three of those has obviously fallen by the wayside. That's why we're with the Freaking Group now. So it wasn't so much casting doubt on it, just an air of caution in that there's still quite a long way to go. I thought it was interesting when the deal was even announced. It was very different than when the 777 deal was announced last September. That was to great fanfare, and there's quotes from Moshiri and saying, we're going to do this. I think Josh Wander, one of the few times we've heard from him, there's quotes on the record from him at the time, almost like, yeah, the deal's done, and as they said, they expected it to be done by the end of the calendar year. It was a very shorter sort of initial announcement from the club when this one was done. As we know, money's not going to be an object with Friedkin. Already owns Roma and Serie A, and there was a story, wasn't there, in recent days in terms of he'd paid an amount of money there in terms of some money's owed. He'd taken care of that as well. But I think just what happens is that the Freaking Group, they want to just go through everything forensically in terms of the finances, make sure there's no skeletons in the closet, make sure that everything is above board. I know that unfortunately there's been a lot of times when people have been in negotiations with Mr. Moshiri, they've come out of talks thinking one thing and then the reality has been quite different. I think Moshiri would be feeling a lot of heat if this didn't happen now at any point, if the Freaking Group did discover something and it all fell through. I'm not too sure what the reception would be. There'd be a lot of frustration with Mr. Moshiri, but there'd be that's just where it is at. Just as caution that there's a lot of work to be done, and it's not putting it on a dampener and saying there's some sorts of doubts. Everybody wants it to happen. Freaking wouldn't have put in that money that he's put in so far if he didn't want it to happen. But there's just a lot of detail still to go through at this stage.
Yeah, so I hope that answers the question, Liam. I mean that was my take from reading the piece. Dave Powell's piece, our chief business of football writer, who has been on a couple of Royal Blue podcasts over the past couple of weeks, well worth a listen to go listen and watch those back. My understanding, and you can read this article on the Liverpool Echo website, is that it was literally, it's just not going to be anytime imminent. It's going to be over the next couple of weeks, if not months. This due diligence obviously takes a little bit of time, doesn't it? So we will see, and I think everyone, like you said, Chris, both parties want it to happen, and we're here waiting now in anticipation. It looks positive, doesn't it? So that's a little bit of takeover talk, which we weren't planning on doing it, but it was a good question from Liam, so we've clarified that. Chris, we're getting questions in, more transfer stuff about specifically Iliman Ndiaye. That's how I'm gonna say it. Ndiaye. I mean, I think obviously reports earlier in the week on Twitter, specifically from Fabrizio Romano, said the deal was pretty much done, undergoing a medical, personal terms have agreed. Obviously, transfer has been agreed as well with Marseille. Any updates with regards to that?
No, just that it was progressing. I would, Evertonians of a certain vintage, like myself, we remember, the infamous times in the 90s when Fabrizio Ravanelli fell through deals for Muller, stuff like that. I mean, suppose we had more recent examples.
Leroy Fair.
Yeah, that's going a bit more recent.
That's my most modern
one.
Yeah, there
you go. Yeah, late noughties, wasn't it, that?
Swansea, wasn't it?
Swansea?
That was eventually, he didn't go to Everton, and then that was, retrospectively he came over to the Premier League. But, so you're always sort of a bit wary until you do see them in the shirt being paraded at Finch Farm or whatever. But, that being said, famous last words, there's an expectation that this deal will go through now. I mean, so much so, obviously, I did a piece the other day. It was my favourite piece of the week, actually, considering all the transfer comings and goings that we've been discussing and stuff like that. His first taste of senior football, believe it or not, came in a loan spell at Hyde United. So tracked down his old manager from Hyde, and it was a great chat. To be fair, some really sort of positive stuff about him. I mean, he sounds like the player that Dyche would like, and you see why Dyche has gone for him, and a real hard worker, and he's a humble guy. But speaking to Evan McGurk, his old Hyde manager, he was saying that he thinks Evertonians will love him on the ball and love him even more for his work off the ball. And given that what we know that the Goodison crowd can be like. I mean, Dennis Draculas, probably got a lot more love than his ability necessarily you'd think would bring him. Whereas someone like Romelu Lukaku get maybe a bit of stick for not working hard as he could be, despite banging in all the goals. But yeah, he seems to have that about him, and that he's not afraid to put a shift in. But he has got a box of tricks as well. He's a street footballer to start off with. He's from Rouen, Normandy originally, Senegalese father, and he went back to Senegal with his dad, went over there, and then he was playing non-league football in England, Boreham Wood, and I think it was a team called Street Ballers or something in London, and Sheffield United spotted him. So when he first started out with them, he was still a teenager, and they just sent him out on loan to Hyde, where he mucked in with the lads and managed to get through the rough and tumble of the English non-league game, despite everyone trying to kick him because he was doing all kinds of flicks and tricks. So yeah, hopefully, the expectation is that it will go through, and hopefully he's a player who Evertonians will like. I know he obviously played up top as like more of a natural centre forward for Sheffield United, but the wait and see where it is with Everton, where he can play down either flank, or obviously in that Abdoulaye Doucouré sort of attacking midfield role, knitting the forward line and the midfield together, because he's obviously quite a versatile player across that front line.
I think it's worth pointing out the last forward Everton got with Sheffield United links, who'd spent time in non-league on loan, hasn't done too bad for himself.
Yep. Well, he's been, yeah, I agree. For those who don't know, who are we talking about?
Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah. Okay.
Spent time at Steadybridge Celtic, didn't he, in his Conference North back then, I think.
Oh, that was, I remember, another great grassroots piece we did with his manager, and now he spent the first night in A&E after a baptism of fire in non-league football. But so
he's obviously certainly made himself a bit of a cult hero, hasn't he? Figure. So yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, well, sticking with Ndiaye, I can't say his name, Ndiaye. You've reliably informed us before the podcast that you're going to refer to him as the guy from Marseille.
The lad from Marseille.
The lad from Marseille. What do you think about him, Connor? If you were going to put him in a mould of a player that we might know, what would you put him in?
I mean, that's a tough one because I'm no expert on the lad, I've got to say. But he was someone who did into it last year, weren't he? Yeah. There was obviously a lot of talk last year that Everton were interested. And you do wonder, to be fair, whether, with the greatest will and respect, whether like he maybe looked at Everton last season, Everton just couldn't get a deal done, or maybe he was a little bit of apprehension because of how bad the season had gone before. But he's someone who they've kind of clearly kept a radar on, and kept an eye on, who's impressed. I think the big thing is he's a forward who seems to work hard off the ball as much as on it. And I think, like Chris has already alluded to, I think one thing about the Everton faithful is they love a forward who works as hard off the ball, I think, as they do on the ball. And that is a major positive, because especially the way Sean Dyche plays in terms of the one up front, you've got to put a real shift in, haven't you? You've got to take one for the team at times. So I think that's a real positive, and it's just additional firepower, isn't it, in an area where Everton probably need bodies. And one thing from this actually that is not being mentioned, but I wouldn't be against seeing, is obviously we'll come on to Beto, because obviously he's been linked, hasn't he, with a move away. But if Everton were to keep Calvert-Lewin, Beto, and bring Ndiaye in, was it free up maybe Yusuf Shamiti going out on loan next season, which I think is something he could really benefit from, because I think towards the end of the season we saw glimpses of a bit of a player blossom, but I think he needs to play games, and he needs to play games in a first team proper environment. And me and Chris spoke about this at length throughout the last season. We were both annoyed that he didn't play more of the under 21 EFL trophy matches, because they felt like a real kind of good learning curve for him. I think he played the last one, did he?
Mansfield, when they'd already lost the first two.
But you're thinking, why couldn't he have played in the other two? Because at that point he wasn't really getting a look in. So I don't know whether this signing actually could free up Shamiti going out on loan for a season and getting some real first team experience under his belt.
If we were to keep all the others, though.
And developing, because I think we saw flashes last season of a good player. Like you think of the touch and the turn, and he done okay. But I think he needs to first team. He needs to develop. He needs first team football. He needs to get experience. I wouldn't be against him going out on loan if we were to keep all three. Keep the three forwards that we potentially have. That does seem a big ask though, because it's tough enough at the best of times, isn't it, keeping 3 forwards happy, especially when your manager's the tush only plays with 1 up top. But maybe just a little bit of food for thought there as we head into the length of the window.
Just before we move on, I can answer your question directly, Ian, because who he plays like, because
Go on.
I did a piece. I use this. It's a statistical service called Comparisinator, and it allows me to do quite a few articles when we're looking at players who we perhaps don't know about, and sort of Everton potential transfer targets. And they've got a tool on it, and it's called the similarity comparison. So you put a player's name in, you compare him to somebody who's already in the Premier League, and the lad from Marseille scored got a 99% match to a current Premier League player, and it's Matthias Cunha of Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Okay.
So if you know much about Matthias Cunha, apparently the lad from Marseille is a 99% match for him, Iliman Ndiaye.
Well, let's stick with the forward line, because I do think it's all relevant to kind of what we're talking about. Beto has kind of been linked with a move away. Past couple of days, Fenerbahçe, obviously Mourinho's taken over that. I think more recent reports have poured a bit of hot water on that, and it's not.
Yeah, that was one of mine, to be fair. I asked about that one, and I'm told, I wasn't saying definitively in the future, but at this stage, Fenerbahçe have not been in contact. Yeah. That wasn't to rule out maybe they will get in contact, and it certainly wasn't saying Beto's not for sale, but at this stage, no contact made at the moment.
Okay, well that nicely brings me on to my next point then. So Beto, where does Beto's future lie? Because even if these reports aren't true, you know, Beto, as for all intents and purposes, probably cut a bit of frustrated figure at Goodison Park over the past 12 months, and you could probably say at the beginning of the last season you wouldn't have expected that, because you probably wouldn't have expected Calvert-Lewin to be playing as many games as he did, maybe even to have the impact that he did. We know what he's about, Calvert-Lewin, but we just all thought Beto was the one who was going to come in and maybe take Calvert-Lewin's place. That's not been the case. So would you expect Beto to be at Goodison Park and Everton player at the start of this coming season?
Yeah. I really don't know, because a big part of this could depend on what happens with Calvert-Lewin, because if Calvert-Lewin gets sold, I mean, all of a sudden, Beto, whether you like him or not, is your main man until somebody else comes in, because I think you did a tongue-in-cheek tweet about this, didn't you, Ian, when you were saying about, you totally agreed with me on my stance on DCL. No, well, it made you feel funny.
No, it didn't. Yeah, we don't often agree, Chris, and it was probably one of the first times that we did agree. I just think that if too much changes, it's kind of rocking the boat, getting rid of Calvert-Lewin. I would much rather keep him for one more season and be prepared to let him go on a free. And some people might say, well, that's just playing it safe, too safe. But you know, I'd say, well, we do need to play it safe, to be honest. We need to be in the Premier League at the start of the following season for, you know, the start of Bramley Moore. Yeah,
absolutely, definitely. I 100% agree with you in that. It's such an important thing in that, okay, Jarrad Branthwaite was the standout star for Everton last season, the breakthrough star of the season. But as gutted as you be to lose him, and he's, you know, a generational talent, you know Everton could get another centre-back come in there. Might not be as good, probably not going to be as good as Jarrad Branthwaite, but, you know, we've got to do a job and still be a solid outfit, and we could fit into the Sean Dyche system. But given the lack of funds at Everton, and it doesn't matter even if Dan Friedkin comes in and there's a war chest on the horizon in 12 months' time or something, it's no good. Now, whatever happens, Friedkin Group or not, that's not going to be resolved until after this transfer window. So with money tight at Everton, they're just not going to get another centre-forward of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's calibre or sort of pedigree. They're going to get nowhere near that. So if they were to lose him, then all of a sudden, I mean, you get rid of Beto as well. Only maybe if you cashed in on Beto and then you were able to get somebody new, like of a higher ilk sort of level of player. Maybe they had an ace up their sleeve or something like that. But yeah, so I think that Beto's situation maybe depends on what happens with Calvert-Lewin, because I'm totally with you. I'd much rather even risk him going for nothing in 12 months' time. People have said, well, if he won't sign the contract, you know, cash in. But we've seen already that obviously Newcastle United thought they could do a deal, but Everton aren't just going to be giving him away for nothing here. They still want good money for him, and it's a level. At the end of the day, he's one of only 4 players, 32 years in the Premier League, who's broken the 50-goal barrier for Everton. And I found it was weird, as much as the idea of Minter sort of excited us, and thought that, well, that was possibly sort of the best Everton could get from that potential deal with Calvert-Lewin if he'd have gone to Newcastle United. And there is an understanding that Minter still fancies a move to Goodison Park, although obviously it could be further down the line and in terms of Everton raising the cash now. But I thought it was a bit rich, really, that Newcastle were saying, well, we value Minter at 40 million, so you can have this lad who's not even kicked a ball in the Premier League, and then we get like a established Premier League striker going the opposite direction, as a make weight, as a part X. So I'm not too sure how that one would have worked. Yeah, I just think he's important to the way Everton play. I know his goal tally wasn't incredible last season, but he was still Everton's top scorer in what was a difficult time. He went 23 games without scoring, but finished the season strongly. And also, he's got a lot of detractors. People say he won't put his body on the line. I think that's not fair. I mean, he played in that derby when he wasn't 100%, and obviously look what he did there against Liverpool. He's actually produced some of sort of Goodison's standout moments in the last couple of years at really important times. The diving header against Crystal Palace, of course, and now that Dyche has got him fit, because you got to give manager credit in that respect as well. Vowed to leave no stone left unturned in terms of the player's fitness, because Calvert-Lewin only started 17 games in both of the previous 2 seasons, played 39 games last season. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that one, Ian. I think that I'd risk losing him for nothing, because Everton just got to get to Bramley Moor Dock, got to make that stadium move, got to enjoy that last season at Goodison intact as a Premier League club, and you're sort of put on a big risk if you were to lose Calvert-Lewin, and I just think that it's unnecessary. You don't want to put yourself that in danger just to get a quick buck, unless they've got some lace up the sleeve, which is highly unlikely given the financial state of the club. It's like a short-term gain for putting yourself under a real lot of pressure if you're to lose Calvert-Lewin.
I think there's 2 things in this for me, and Chris touched on it at the start. One is formation and Everton set up, because I don't want, this is not me for any minute saying that Everton should sell him or whatnot, but the way Everton play defensively and the way Everton set up defensively, you could probably get away with losing Branthwaite and putting someone else in there. I don't think we keep as many clean sheets as we did last year. Obviously we're not good. We're losing someone who's probably going to be a generational talent if we're all, I know we get shout staff for getting carried away as Everton fans over Branthwaite, but we've all seen him develop over the last year. Yeah. He very much is going to be a generational talent, in my opinion. So you lose that, but you probably get away with putting someone in there and they'll still be solid, and they'll still keep, to be able to keep clean sheets and be able to win games. The problem is the other end of the pitch, because when you play one up front like Sean Dyche does, whoever's up there's got to be able to hold the ball up, run in behind and score goals. They're 3 hard tasks for any person. Calvert-Lewin showed in them games towards the end of last season, and before that, obviously, of course, that he can do all 3 of them. He can hold the ball up, he can run in behind, and he can score goals. That's where the difference for me is, because you've got to look at expectation, and I think I'm with both of you. I think it'd be mad to lose Calvert-Lewin, and also the big thing with Beto is, and Calvert-Lewin, I think we all got carried away when Beto come in and thought, he could really challenge Calvert-Lewin, this could be the rocker up Dom backside that he's long needed, and Everton now kind of have 2 forwards who. But the problem we've got is that the gulf in quality and the gulf in class between Beto and Calvert-Lewin is massive. And I know that sounds harsh on Beto, because it was his first Premier League season, and he was in and out, and it was bit partying in there. But you look at Beto when he's played, and you look at when a fit and firing Calvert-Lewin has played, and they're worlds apart. And don't get me wrong, Beto might one day get to that level. You can't write him off. He's not
a kid, though, is he? Was he 26
It would be unfair to just write him off after one season, because we do see players blossom and get better. But for the right now, they're worlds apart in what they can really offer. And that's the big worry for me, is you let Calvert-Lewin go, we're going to bring in Ndiaye, but then you're left with Beto. And I think you don't want it to be where the gulf and the quality is so far apart. And like I say, the setup as well is a big part of that, because when you play with one up front, that one forward's got to be able to do everything. And I don't think Beto would be the answer to that in the way Calvert-Lewin is.
Well, the way Everton play as well. I mean, you know, if you're looking at
Everton is a stronger team, but Calvert-Lewin aren't than we're out.
No, yeah, absolutely. You know, we can have this Calvert-Lewin debate till we talk, till we're blue in the face, and it's probably a separate podcast in itself. But you know, one thing that is probably against him is his goals tally, Connor, isn't it? You know, he probably doesn't score enough goals. But on the other side, which is where I am with kind of you two, is that the way Sean Dyche wants Everton to play, Calvert-Lewin is pivotal into making that happen, which is exactly what you've just said. And we saw, you know, in that run of games, November, December, where Calvert-Lewin was playing, okay, he went on a long run without scoring goals, but players around him were scoring goals. The goals were being shared around the team. Yeah. You want your striker to score goals. I don't think that is, you know, that is the be all and end all. That is exactly what you want. But who cares who scores the goals if you're winning football matches?
And also as well, people don't realise how hard it is to score goals when you're a lone centre forward, because you've got to have, and this is the issue Everton have got. Like, again, this will be a separate podcast itself, but the way Sean Dyche sets the team up with Decore playing off the forward is great in terms of like the legs and the energy and, you know, the battling work ethic that Decore brings. But I think we can all agree that he doesn't bring the same level of class on the ball. You know, he's not a James Rodriguez playing. You know, no surprises. You know, Calvert-Lewin had one of his most successful goal scoring seasons when he had James Rodriguez playing off him.
Yeah.
And you know, you think of the goals, some of the goals they score where it's either needle passes. That's what happens when you play with a number 10 who perhaps isn't as mobile as what Decore is, but has got that little bit more of class, that little bit more flair. The way Sean Dyche plays is very different with Decore in that, you know, it's very much off second balls, energy, get around the pitch. Decore doesn't bring that little bit of class and quality in the final third, and that's a big thing in all this as well. You know, you've got to look at what's around Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, you know, like I say, it was no surprise when he had like Richarlison, Luca Dean, James Rodriguez feeding him the ball. He scored a lot of goals. You know, now he's got Jack Harrison, Dwight McNeil, Decore. All three very good players, but very different players to the other three who were massively influential in scoring loads of goals. So you've got to look at the bigger picture. And I think as a lone centre forward, it's tough to score goals, but as a lone centre forward, not feeding off quality in the final third, it's even tougher.
We're coming up to the hour now, so we'll finish off soon. But just final points on Calvert-Lewin. Newcastle seemed like the fifth for him. Like that was the team that if it was someone was going to come in for him from the Premier League, it was going to be them. That deal seems to be not in it, like, you know, dead in the water. You know, AC Milan have been touted as a team for him, but realistically, where does he actually go now? I don't think he's going to go to any of the top four.
Maybe it'd be better for him then to stick around. You know, as much as we might not like it, you know, if he is not going to sign a new contract at Everton, maybe play that last year at Everton, and then, you know, he can go wherever he wants. Then, I mean, it won't be a problem. He can sort of pick his team, then, wasn't it? If the market's not looking good for him now, if Newcastle weren't prepared to stump up the cash, it might be in his interest as well, just to wait till he's a free agent, and then whether he wants to go to another Premier League team or go abroad, you know, and AC Milan, you know, he's been there for Milan Fashion Week, but you know, but he could have his pick then, so maybe it'd be best for both parties.
Okay, final 2 points then I want to speak about, or just touch on Ashley Young, and I want to mention Jordan Pickford as well, the record that he broke for England in the past couple of days. So Ashley Young, Connor signed a contract extension. I think a lot of people would not really surprised, but given the state of our financial situation, that we're offering existing players new deals, even if it's like a 1 year deal. But obviously he's not getting any younger. Ashley Young, you know, be a bit worried if he was going to be starting every single game for Everton, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that this is a very much a Sean Dyche contract extension, and I think Sean Dyche has been desperate to keep him around the club. You know, rates him really highly off the pitch in terms of his attitude, his application, the type of person he is around the dressing room. I think he's quite popular. I think he sets standards. So, you know, it was no surprise this got over the line. Obviously, Everton have been quite keen. Sean Dyche has been quite keen for him to stick around, do one more year. I asked him back in February, I think it was, after the Tottenham draw, if you know, if he had any plans on retirement. Essentially, you know, if this was going to be his last season. He emphatically shut me down. I was like, no, I'll be playing on next season. So it was always, you know, we always felt like one that was going to get over the line, and get over the line it has. Yeah, no real surprise. I think Sean Dyche is a big fan of keeping people around the dressing room who are good characters. I think is probably a phrase that they should use, and he very much seems to tick that box, doesn't he? Good experience pro, and yeah, I get the issue of people saying, well, doesn't look great, does it? We can't be relying on him, but it's one of them, isn't he? He's a good squad player, he's a utility player, he can play multiple positions, and ultimately they're hard to come by in football these days.
I mean, Chris, he wasn't great at the end of the day last season, but he did have his moments.
Is that you being kind there?
No, I mean,
I thought it was actually better when he was
right wing.
Away from the fullback where he wasn't causing as much issues.
That was his position, isn't it?
When he was
a younger one. I felt like the two standouts for me both came against Newcastle, home and away. I thought when we beat Newcastle 3-0, I thought that was his probably best game in an Everton shirt on the right wing, and then he obviously won the penalty.
Used his Manchester United experience.
No, he did.
Whinging at the referee.
Well, do you remember that? Like, no one was.
But again, that's probably like the things Sean, the characteristics that Sean Dyche is looking at, isn't he? Saying, well, no one else spoke up, no one else chose the referee, and was like, what, VAR reviewed that. So
pivotal moment in changing the season for Everton. That, but yeah, all joking apart, fills 4 positions, doesn't he? Play either full-back role or either wide midfield role. So there you go. You got 4 players in one. Yeah, I don't want him in my first 11 every single week necessarily, but over the course of the season, he'd do a job, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be a very small Everton squad by Premier League standards. So yeah, keep him along, and same goes for the other sort of veteran players who've signed on for another year, Idrissa Gueye and Seamus Coleman. Given that the lack of funds in the club, it's smart moves. Just tie him down for one more deal, and then go again, start a brand new era at Bromley Moordock in 12 months' time. And again, that sort of harps back to the old Calvert-Lewin argument, isn't it? It's just get through this year now with what you got, when the proven quality, then look at how things are going to change in a year's time.
Okay, well, I want to finish off on a positive, even though it is England related, and we all know how dire England have been this tournament, despite getting through the group stages. But Jordan Pickford has now kept 11 clean sheets at major international tournaments, overtaking Peter Shilton's record of 10. Just probably like congratulations really to Pickford. Maybe not a record that many people would deem to be like, a good record, but when you think about it, it's actually the pressure that comes with international tournaments and being in England number 1. It's decent, isn't it?
This is what his fourth tournament now. Is it fourth tournament? Yeah. He's done two World Cups now, two Euros. And you think of in that time, he's got to what? A semi-final, a quarter-final, and a final.
Which he saved 2 penalties, and then he still lost.
And he still lost. Yeah, it's. I think the big thing with Pickford, and I mean, we don't want to get. I know we've talked about this to death, but obviously, it was good last year that he got the plaudits I think he deserved for his Everton performances, because I think too often in the past it was always good for England but not great for Everton. Shout that used to come out,
and Gary Neville said that,
which was just like utter rubbish.
Know better,
we've all. Well, if we're being brutally honest, Everton probably wouldn't be playing Premier League football if it wasn't for Jordan Pickford. But you think of the last 2 seasons, certainly the season he stayed up under Frank Lampard, the Chelsea game,
save,
for instance, springs to mind. But Man United, I think, a couple of weeks before that. So yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic player, and Everton are very, very lucky to have him. If we're being honest, he's a top class goalkeeper, and it's good that he'll get that recognition now. And let's face it, I don't think that record's probably be broken for a long time to come.
No.
11 clean sheets in tournament football is a lot, and I don't think that'll be broken anytime soon, because I don't think there's a goalkeeper coming through, certainly not in the immediate, who you really see rivaling Pickford. And there's probably a chance he might do the next tournament.
Yeah, he's still,
got the chance to
he's a decade younger than Peter Shilton was, who the goalkeeper who he's overtaken. Shilton finished off the World Cup with Italia 90. He was 40 years old. Pickford's only 30.
He's like a 40-year-old now.
Goalkeeping terms, he's got plenty more fuel in the tank, definitely.
What would you value? Not that I'm trying to sell Pickford, by the way. What would you value Jordan Pickford at? 80 to 100 million?
Easily.
Sort of that. He's got to be there, he's got to be in that sort of category, hasn't he? I mean, Kepa's the world record, but he's still got plenty. He's only signed a new contract, didn't he? So yeah, but yeah, I don't want to talk about selling, but yeah, like you say, he's just. It's just ridiculous. I've even seen people sort of questioning him now. As bad as England have been and he's been one of like the massive plus points. I mean, the only goal that he did concede, I mean, it was a wonder strike went in off the post, didn't it? He couldn't really do anything about that. I seem to remember him making he didn't have much to do against the first game against Serbia, but pulling one out the bag when he needed there, and then another clean sheet against Slovenia. Yeah, they did. England's problems are all at the other end, as we know, despite what we might have thought before the tournament with their embarrassment of attacking riches. So yeah, he's just not put a foot wrong or a glove wrong for Everton or England in a long time. So yeah, he's not part of England's problems, and he's been so consistent for both club and country.
I mean, you are probably asking the worst two people to praise Pitt, because I think we're firmly in the founder members of his fan club. Yeah, well, we've got plenty of us. I mean, it's a regular bone of contention of mine and Chris's over the years has been some of the criticism levelled to Jordan Pickford from outside sources.
Well, I certainly wasn't expecting you to criticise him or anything like that.
Oh, we'll never criticise Jordan, don't you worry.
Absolutely. Any final closing remarks for today's Thursday podcast?
I think that'll do
it. Oh, good, yeah. Okay, well, I am going to be back tomorrow, roughly around 1:30 a.m. live with Joe Thomas and Gav Buckland. What did I say?
A.M.
Did I? Definitely won't be 1:30 a.m. Unless I've had a drink. You never know what could happen after that.
I mean, that'd be a lively one, wouldn't it? Strictly
after 1 o'clock, so it's going to be roughly around 1:30 with Joe and Gav. Just give us a like on today's stream, share and subscribe, obviously, as well. And this podcast will be up on Apple Pods and Spotify in the next hour as well. So if you're just missing it, you can, and you prefer to listen to it, you can always listen to it on that. So yeah, I've been Ian Kroll, joined by Conor O'Neill and Chris Beasley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.